All right. Yeah, we are just going to be moving right along into our next speaker. So it is Dean Shirelli. He is a clinical associate professor for ASU, and he will be giving a presentation um, called "Nourishing Solutions to Reduce Food Waste from Plate to Planet." So, Dean, whenever you are ready, I know we are sharing your PowerPoint. So, whenever you're ready.
So good afternoon, everyone. I think my camera is on. Could you please verify that you can see me?
Yeah, we can see.
Great. So thank you, everyone, for hanging into the end. I found this conference to be very interesting, like I do every other year. I especially was interested in AI. I think AI is a tool that we'll be able to use to address the topic that I'm talking about today. Dean is my first name. I'm not an academic dean, and I am a registered dietitian nutritionist and a registered environmental health specialist. And did you know that over one third of the food made in the United States is never eaten? And did you know that food waste is the most common material found in incinerators and landfills? These are issues the Environmental Protection Agency, the US Department of Agriculture, and the FDA are striving to mitigate. When mitigation efforts are successful, we do get measurable benefits. Some examples are recovery of valuable nutrients, reduced food insecurity, improved soil quality, and a more sustainable and circular economy. Being a registered dietitian and a sanitarian makes this topic very interesting to me. We waste so much food, yet nationwide we experience real food insecurity, including in Arizona, and I'm going to address that today. So, next slide, please. So, during the session, I'll summarize the national strategy for reducing food loss. I will illustrate the wasted food scale from the EPA. I'll summarize some insightful facts and figures. I will look at some challenges that we face and some strategies and solutions. Those will be from the perspective of consumers, individual households, communities, specifically the state of Arizona, and national levels. Next, please. So I'm going to start off with the goals of the national strategy. This is an initiative from the White House and was published in 2024. The goals of the strategy are to prevent food loss waste, increase recycling, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, save money, and build cleaner communities. In looking at the term food loss and waste, there are distinctions. And one might ask, what is the difference between food loss, food waste, and food loss waste? I'll provide some definitions next. Food loss and waste is food made for people that gets removed for any reason from the food supply chain and is not eaten. Food loss is associated mainly with production of food. It consists of food made for people that gets removed from the food supply chain, again, for any reason, before it reaches the retail sector and stores and is not eaten. And then finally, food waste is associated mainly with consumers, retailers, and households. It's the food made for people that gets removed from the food supply chain, again, for any reason, at stores, restaurants, and homes, and is not eaten. Next. This slide shows the environmental footprint for food waste. This consists of food that goes to landfill, combustion, compost, and anaerobic digestion. When these processes are combined, they comprise the net environmental footprint of food loss waste, as described on the previous slide. The figure shows the environmental burden of farm to kitchen segments. These start off with primary agricultural production and continue through distribution, processing, and retail. These conclude when the food is either eaten or wasted. To illustrate this journey, I'm going to show a 2-minute video. It is a love story with, unfortunately, a sad ending. Next, please. So this video is 2 minutes long. It's called The Extraordinary Life and Times of a Strawberry. And a spoiler alert here, it's a tearjerker. I can honestly say when I saw this video, it really stuck with me. And it's one of the reasons I got really interested in this topic. If you could hit play, please.
Oh, my sweet baby, I'll travel the world for you. I love you.
Can we get strawberries?
No, honey.
Please?
Okay.
So thank you for sharing. I was rooting for the strawberry right up until the end, and I'm still rooting for strawberries. Again, it's one of the reasons why this is a topic that really interests me. And I have to acknowledge that what just happened has happened in my home, including this last Sunday. I went to make pancakes, which I do every Sunday. I went to the back of my fridge and there were strawberries in there, and more than half of them were not usable. And it happens. But being aware, being knowledgeable, and contributing to small changes really makes a difference. And I'm going to describe in depth some of the resources that we have to address this problem. So next, I'm going to share the wasted food scale, which is a graphic from the Environmental Protection Agency that impacts how food can be acted upon from the most desirable ways and least desirable ways for waste. If you can hit next, please. So the wasted food scale focuses on actions to do and to avoid. So starting off on the left-hand side of the diagram, this is ideally what we should do. The most desirable is to donate, upcycle, feed to animals, or leave it unharvested. Upcycling transforms edible parts and scraps into new food products. Some examples of this are using orange peels to give flavor to drinks, using the hard stems from broccoli to make slaw, and using spent grains from brewing to make bread. An advantage of this method is it keeps food in the supply chain and prevents waste. Next. Composting uses anaerobic decomposition to break down organic waste such as yard trim. Compost enhances soil health, helps retain water, and reduces erosion. This method reduces organic matter and nutrients to the ecosystem, thereby supporting soil quality and the long-term vitality of soil. Anaerobic digestion with beneficial use of digestate and biosolids breaks down organic materials like food waste with no oxygen. It generates biogas and digestate. Biogas is a good thing. It's a source of renewable energy, and biosolids are also a good thing. They are nutrient-rich products such as fertilizer, soil amendments, and products can be used for animal bedding. Using digestate as a fertilizer reduces the need to use synthetic fertilizers and it helps to enhance soil resilience. Next. Anaerobic digestion with the disposable of digestate biosolids occurs when a microorganism breaks down carbon-based materials, such as wasted food, with no oxygen. Although this produces biogas and digestate, unfortunately, the nutrient recovery is not as good because the um, biogas turns into methane in landfills. Even though energy is generated, there are far fewer environmental benefits than the benefits that we get from the beneficial land applications. So food waste for manufacturing can also be applied to land as a raw amendment. The ways we can do so are to spread, spray, or inject food waste on or below the surface. Next. Sending food down the drain combines it with wastewater, which creates methane emissions in sewers and unfortunately takes more energy for treatment. The sewage is released almost directly into the environment. And even if the water resource facility generates energy through anaerobic digestion, the recovered energy does not offset the amount of emissions that are released and the extra energy needed to process this. Food in landfill makes up 24% of US landfill material, and it produces methane very quickly as it decomposes. Food decays really fast, and unfortunately, most methane gas is released before the landfill gas systems in landfill can capture the gas. So this becomes a high impact contributor to methane emissions. Also, the valuable nutrients in wasted food are not recovered in this way. Incineration is a low preference option because it does not recover food nutrients. Wet food generates the least energy compared to other materials and is a very inefficient fuel source. I'll illustrate the big picture about food loss waste next. We have enough food and calories to feed everyone and to eliminate food insecurity, plus still have plenty of food for leftovers. This figure shows that surplus food that's left over is a larger amount than what's needed for food security for all Americans. The figure includes only edible food. In other words, edible parts such as bones, shells, and peels are excluded from estimates. Surplus calories are estimated using biological models for human caloric requirements and loss adjusted food availability. As a dietitian and a sanitarian, I see a lot of opportunities to improve. Food security and food waste reduction can be mitigated. We can solve this. It's a winnable battle with the right solutions. One might ask, how much food does a typical family of four actually waste in 1 month? Next, please. This photo shows how much food a family of four wastes in 1 month. It's broken down into 8 different food groups. It includes food wasted in homes and stores. And using older data, the US Department of Agriculture estimates that wasted food costs a family of four about $1,500 per year. These data are from 2021. Excuse me, these are older data. New data from 2021 would indicate that the cost is much higher than that with adjustments made for inflation. I think we can all say safely that food costs have gone up maybe 15 to 20%. And I don't think there is a reduction in food loss and waste accordingly. One might ask, how much food are we actually throwing away? Next. For the year 2010 in the United States, 31% or 133 billion pounds of the 430 billion pounds of retail and consumer food went uneaten. The estimated total value of this was almost $162 billion. The top three food groups, as you can see in this diagram, are meat, poultry, and fish combined for a total of 30% or $48 billion, followed by vegetables at 19% or $30 billion, followed by dairy at 17% and $27 billion. In 2021, the estimated dollar value of food loss waste was $444 billion, or roughly 2% of the gross domestic product. You'll see next how food waste contributes to municipal solid waste. Next, please. About 30% of edible food goes to waste. In 2018, the Environmental Protection Agency estimated that over 63 million tons of wasted food was generated in the commercial, institutional, and residential sectors. Americans create more food waste than any other type, and this accounts for over 21% of municipal solid waste. Households are responsible for 40% of wasted food. I'll provide some facts and figures about Arizona next. Arizona has a lot of work to do in terms of food wasting, according to various sources. I did a basic Google search of popular press, typed in Arizona food waste, and there was some eye-popping media, pop culture media, that turned up. ABC News reported Arizona as the worst in the nation for food waste. The Phoenix, Arizona Times had an article indicating similar information. Arizona is a state that wastes the most food, recycles the least, and donates the least to those in need. Next. According to LawnStarter, Arizona is at the very top of the list that wastes the most food. The LawnStarter methodology metrics were wasted food, repurposed food waste, and food waste mitigation efforts. LawnStarter used data from Food Rescue USA, ReFed, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the U.S. Composting Council. This position is noteworthy and calls into question the issue of food insecurity within Arizona. Next. According to feedingamerica.org, 1 in 8 people in Arizona face hunger, and about 1 in 5 children face hunger. The average cost of a meal in Arizona for this data is $3.68. And according to this site, people facing hunger in Arizona need an estimated $666 million more per year to meet their food needs. As humans, I know I am, we're wired to have a natural aversion to throwing away resources, especially if it's something that is ours. There's a term for this called loss aversion. Knowing this, it calls into question, why are we tossing so much food away while there are those in need not far from us who are going without? Next. The most common reasons for food wasted are the food has gone bad, it's become either moldy or spoiled, the household didn't like it or they got tired of it, or the house did not like it as leftovers. Understandably, as a dietitian who works with clients and communities to make better informed food choices, feeding a household is complex. There's meal planning, shopping, storing, preparing food, cooking food. Some of the barriers are lack of time, lack of information, individual food preferences, which within one home can be very different. It's hard to feed a family with all the same food when people have different desires and interests and things that they don't like. Also, children can be really picky. And even though you do your very best to get them to eat food that's good for them, a lot of time on a young person's plate, the food's still left over at the end of a meal. Think of the trope of the kid whose guardian's trying to get them to eat broccoli, and they say, I don't like broccoli, let's send it to another country. I'm sure that's still happening. It's been happening. I'm 57 years old. I did it when I was a kid. I love broccoli now. I'm sure that's something that's continuing in different shapes and forms. Next, please. People often ask whether the data distinguishes between edible and non-edible food. Research in Oregon shows that the household food waste that we throw away About 70% of it could have been eaten, and 30% of it was never edible, meaning it consisted of food scraps like eggshells, bones, and peels. And the next slide, I'll distinguish between household waste from manufacturing and production waste. Next, please. Broadly speaking, between 70 to 90% of food loss waste is edible. Only about 10% of total food loss waste and 30% of household food waste by weight are inedible food parts. Again, this consists of parts like bones, shells, and peels. This figure shows an estimate that only 10% of food loss waste by weight is inedible from the full food supply chain. One might ask, where in the food supply chain is food lost and what types? Next. This chart compares food lost and waste by food category and supply chain stage. It looks at data from the Food and Agriculture Organization and from the US Department of Agriculture. The rows show where in the food supply chain food is lost, and the columns show the type of foods wasted. The most food is wasted by consumers, followed by losses within primary food production. By weight, fruits and vegetables are generally the most wasted food. Next. This chart shows the yearly environmental impact of food loss waste. According to the Environmental Protection Agency and Department of Energy researchers, by having food loss waste, the United States could achieve reductions of 14 to 16% from the food system environmental footprint for agriculture, water, and nitrogen application. Having could also lead to a 9% reduction in non-carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions from primary production. This is a lot of numbers, and it's kind of hard to imagine what would this look like. So let's take a look. What would having food loss waste look like in the real world? Next, please. This chart shows examples for expected annual savings. It's worth noting that these savings can only happen by preventing food waste, not through recycling. The reason is that much of the environmental impact happens during food production. We could save an area of agricultural land as large as Arizona. For reference, Arizona is almost 73 million acres and is the sixth largest state. Food categories included in this example are beverages, cereals, eggs, fish, fruits and vegetables, meat, and milk. We could also save enough water and electricity to supply 20 million households per year, according to the EPA and the US Department of Energy. We could also reduce greenhouse gases equivalent to 23 coal-fired plants, according to the Environmental Protection Agency Greenhouse Gas Equivalencies Calculator. There are many challenges that we need to overcome to have food loss waste. Let's take a look. Next. According to the national strategy, there are many challenges that must be overcome. The good thing is that the national strategy has some realistic, tangible approaches on how we can address this. One challenge is research funding is needed to develop new technologies, solutions, and to understand the root causes of food waste. The US Department of Agriculture funds some research, but there is not a dedicated source for this issue. The need for collaboration exists because the causes of food waste vary a lot across the food supply chain. Solutions require partnerships, complicated partnerships between private sectors, public, and nonprofit organizations. Collaboration is needed so that effective solutions can be scaled, especially in underserved communities. Underserved communities face obstacles such as a lack of access to healthy, affordable food in general, emergency food assistance, and a limited composting infrastructure in these communities makes this issue more challenging. Next. Recycling infrastructure and planning are insufficient to meet the national recycling goal. Expanding recycle requires a lot of resources. Examples are funding, equipment, and collection services. Limited infrastructure exists for redistributing and storing wholesome foods, including cold storage. Obstacles exist to estimating food loss waste. There are data gaps that make it hard to measure food waste impact and track goals. The federal government could improve the measurement tools and reporting for methane emissions, specifically from food waste. There's also legal issues with food donations, and I'm going to call special attention to potential legal issues because this is an area where environmental professionals, many of you on this call, may be able to offer expertise and support. Next. Environmental health professionals are positioned to offer their expertise with food donations, specifically helping to interpret the Emerson Act. This act provides comprehensive federal liability protection to encourage food donations. On the slide, there is a link to a Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic tip sheet that summarizes protections under the Emerson Act. In short, to summarize, the Emerson Act protects food and grocery donors who donate to nonprofits in good faith. It protects food products that meet all labeling and quality standards imposed by the government. This act is quite protective of donors and nonprofits. It was founded specifically on 4 principles, which we'll look at next. The Emerson Act covers donors like businesses, nonprofits, government entities, schools, farmers, and gleaners. Gleaners are people who harvest agricultural donations for nonprofits. I'll summarize the 4 provisions that have to be met. Donations must be qualifying foods that are categorized at a minimum of being apparently wholesome or apparently fit. In other words, even if these foods are aesthetically flawed or unmarketable because they're not perfect by supermarket standards, they can be donated. Donations must be direct donations or through nonprofits like food banks and other food help organizations. Donations must be given to recipients at no cost or at a Good Samaritan reduced price. In other words, the only financial component can be cost for covering the handling and distribution. Donations must be made in good faith and meet food safety requirements according to all levels of government. No protections are extended for donations made with gross negligence or intentional misconduct. Initiatives to overcome challenges can make a really desirable impact. To that end, I'm going to outline the national strategy next. The national strategy focuses on stopping food loss, reducing food waste, boosting recycling, and promoting policies that support reducing loss, waste, and recycling. It outlines actions that the Environmental Protection Agency, the USDA, and FDA can take to address these goals while building upon existing efforts that are already being done by these agencies. The objectives are broken down into specific strategic actions. Next. First, I'm going to distinguish between strategies that target food loss. As you may recall, food loss is loss within food production, so primary manufacturing. Secondly, I'll address food waste, again, which is consumers, households, and retail. Next. The USDA will continue to invest in technologies through various programs that improve supply chain resilience and reduce food waste. The USDA will support innovative manufacturing by using data science and AI to monitor food quality. The previous speaker from AFTO, I think, had some visionary ideas, and I'm really looking forward to how we can harness these tools for the better. The USDA will also improve packaging to extend shelf life and reduce waste. USDAs will improve packaging by developing biodegradable packaging from hopefully more renewable resources. There are testing methods to extend the freshness of food, through intelligent packaging. The FDA ensures that the materials used in food packaging are safe, and it's trying to make it easier for companies to create packaging that keeps food fresher and for longer. Next. The USDA is working to promote collaboration between the airline and maritime industries, hopefully to reduce food waste by reusing uneaten meals and exempting certain food items from waste regulations. The USDA supports using excess food to feed food waste to animals, following strict health regulations that protect not only people, but animals. The USDA promotes partnerships between USDA, small businesses, and agricultural groups to improve crop efficiency and reduce food waste through research and shared efforts. Next. The USDA will bolster support for farmers and food banks by purchasing surplus food from farmers to distribute to schools, food banks, and communities. This will help to reduce food waste while supporting the nation's food security. Again, as a dietitian, food security is so important for me, and we have a long way to go, but many resources to get there. The USDA will support university research by partnering to study how perishable goods move through supply chains and help to identify ways to reduce food waste and improve efficiency. I think these are areas where artificial intelligence, machine learning, using sensors to keep track of time and temperature control for food are going to be very, very useful and effective and scalable. Next. Food waste from consumers, retail, and food service comprises roughly half of the US food loss waste. It carries a larger environmental and economic cost than food losses upstream. Costs accumulate as food is wasted further down the supply chain. Next. A national consumer education and behavior campaign is needed to raise awareness. Awareness is one thing, but getting people to actually change their values, to appreciate the value of their food, and to act accordingly as responsible citizens takes time, effort, and work. The campaign should use trusted communication routes while engaging community leaders in a way that's customizable for particular communities. For example, it should appeal to advocacy groups, business leaders, and influencers. The USDA co-funded a food waste measurement data model for households. This allows for more accurate estimates using surveys, curbside audits, and photo diaries. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture is funding rigorous testing of the effectiveness of different consumer education campaigns to prevent wasted food. They're getting really savvy and trying to figure out what kinds of messages can help to shape behaviors, attitudes, what motivates people to actually act. And it's gearing these towards specific audiences. An 18-year-old influencer may respond very differently to information than an older person who's used to getting their information from Facebook or typical public service announcements or NPR sources like that. Also, engaging children and youth will encourage the development of desired behavior at an earlier age. Activities can build on the USDA's existing efforts. Examples are grants for leadership training, student-led cafeteria food waste audits, and programs that promote culture change at a young age. Farm-to-fork approaches include recipe development, taste testing, composting school garden clippings, or feeding cafeteria food scraps to chickens raised on school grounds. The National School Lunch and Breakfast Program could offer more entree choices, offer raw vegetables daily, and implement an offer service model where participants are asked if they want a certain food, and if they don't want that food, they can decline it, and it's not put on their tray given to them and then by law required to be discarded. Next. The FDA and Food Safety Inspection Services will partner with the private sector to standardize the term best if used by on food labeling when the data is really more about quality than safety. I know as a dietitian, there's a lot of confusion with consumers about what the different labels mean. Best by, used by, best if used by. There's not consistent language in the consumer's mind, and they may see something that says best if used by and interpret it as not safe and throw it away when it's still perfectly good. The USDA will incentivize food donations by expanding the infrastructure for research and education in a way that conveys specific financial benefits for donating. The EPA will refine the Excess Food Opportunities Map, which is a national tool that links sources of excess food to infrastructure that enables donations in food rescue. I'm going to talk about that in more depth later on. And projects will assess the quality, nutritional value, and appropriateness of the food rescued, not just the quantity. Next. The FDA will implement technology-based solutions in collaboration with industry. The focus is to implement tech-enabled traceability and data sharing. Some examples are machine learning, AI, digital sensors, and much more that we haven't even really imagined yet through ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, all these other sources. Increasing the recycling rate for all organic waste through composting, insect farming, and energy production does produce benefits. The benefits include production of livestock, feed, better soil quality, reduced reliance on fossil fuels, all of which are good steps towards reducing greenhouse gases and regenerating natural resources. Again, the goal of our federal agencies often is to build a more sustainable food system and at the same time, a circular economy that saves everyone money. Win-win situation. Next. Outreach can expand the market for products made from recycled organic waste. Examples are compost and rendered materials. Education materials could highlight the benefits and boost demand for these products among stakeholders like municipalities, real estate developers, farmers, and landscapers. A major challenge in organics recycling is contamination from plastics, PFAS, and other persistent chemicals. To help address contamination in organic waste recycling, the EPA and USDA offer many forms of technical expertise. The EPA is exploring ways to minimize non-compostable plastic contamination, and the FDA is updating its guidance for industry to support more biodegradable packaging development while decreasing plastic and PFAS contamination in organic waste. Next. Policies can help the U.S. achieve its goals. Prioritizing these policies based on the EPA's wasted food scale can support setting goals, sharing best practices, and helping with food waste diversion. Examples include cost-benefit analysis tools, pay-as-you-throw programs, and organic waste landfill bans. Many states have adopted such policies, with 25 states introducing food waste legislation in the year 2021 alone. Next. Now I'm going to provide selected resources that represent plate-to-planet solutions. I'll address consumers, individual households, communities, Arizona, and national resources. Next. The EPA is a great resource for helping consumers in their home. They have a fantastic plethora of resources. Examples are planning tools such as a guesstimator, meal prep mate, recipes, and an interactive storage guide. Individual households and consumers can do simple measures like simply buying less, planning meals, making shopping lists, using ugly food, experimenting with food scraps, freezing leftovers, upcycling food, and accepting cultural change, adopting to the change that wasting food is something we just should not do. It's valuable and it can save us money by being more careful and active citizens. The EPA also provides guides and tips for use in schools. To maximize impact, it's really good to educate youth and communities to reach a larger audience and earlier on. Next. The Preventing Wasted Food in Community Toolkit is a social marketing resource. The purpose is to promote community-focused behavior change. This is a great tool that provides a structured process to plan, implement, and evaluate strategies. The focus is how to address common barriers and motivators related to food waste. It's rich with ready-to-use campaign materials that any community can customize. Next. The EPA also provides high-quality, reproducible infographics. These are ready to use for publishing, printing, or distributing on digital media, such as social media. This slide shows some examples of composting and greenhouse gas infographics. I think these are really attractive. They're to the point, they're bright, they're memorable, and they can be used across many different media. Next. Now I'm going to address specifically some resources and solutions available in Arizona. Earlier in the session, I described Arizona as having, I'll put this nicely, room for improvement with food waste. The good thing is in Arizona, we have really good materials and tools. It's a matter of educating about them, generating awareness, and implementing them. So I'm going to describe some of the resources that are highlighted at the EPA's website. The EPA provides local resources state by state. The information that I looked at was published in July 2024, so this is quite up to date. I'll start off with Waste Not Want Arizona. This is an organization that rescues fresh, perishable food from over 101 donors and delivers it to more than 80 nonprofits throughout the valley. They collaborate with restaurants, caterers, hotels, and other businesses. Donations can be a daily occurrence, or it can be a once-in-a-while deal. Through the organization's Meal Connect app, they have volunteer drivers who will transport good food directly to those who need it. Next. AmpleHarvest.org is a nationwide nonprofit that enables gardeners to donate their surplus harvests. And an estimated 61 million people grow food in their homes and community gardens. Ample Harvest enables gardeners to easily donate their fresh produce to over 8,000 registered local food pantries across all 50 states. Next. Searchable databases exist to locate food pantries, soup kitchens, food banks, and other food help by location, by zip code. Foodpantries.org is a national directory of food pantries and subsidized groceries. If you type in Arizona, you'll see many facilities all across the state. Next. Chefs to End Hunger is a nonprofit that redistributes prepared food from hotels, restaurants, and other food service operations to local charities that serve meals. It helps chefs use resources to repurpose food that is currently going to waste. It operates in California, Nevada, and Arizona. Next. Market on the Move, Phoenix and Tucson rescues produce and dried canned goods from growers and distributors. For a $10 donation, participants receive up to 60 pounds of fresh produce and goods. MOM locations are like farmers markets and expand Metro Phoenix, Northern Arizona, the Tucson Valley, and Southern Arizona. Next. The Borderlands Produce Rescue supplements meals in Arizona communities with fresh rescue produce. It was founded in Nogales to address the massive food waste in that community. Nearly 1/3 of all produce consumed in North America passes through this border region, and about 5% of it is discarded due to cosmetic flaws, despite being perfectly edible. Borderlands Produce Rescue works to recover this food. Next. Earlier, I mentioned the Excess Food Opportunities Map. This is an interactive map that identifies potential generators and recipients of excess food. The map displays about 950,000 locations of potential excess food generators, including correction facilities, schools, farmers markets, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, and retail. The information provided includes facility-specific locations with source-separated information. For example, organics programs, refrigerated warehousing, anaerobic digestion facilities, composting, and food banks. This is a really good resource to figure out what's where and who can do what. Next. GrayCycle is the first company in Arizona to receive EPA approval for its biodiesel. They sell certified biodiesel made from used cooking oil, also known as yellow grease. Biodiesel can also be made from recycled soybean oil and animal fats. GrayCycle is certified to manufacture and sell biodiesel and blends. These are particularly beneficial for industrial use. Next. Baker Commodities offers used cooking oil pickup in Phoenix and surrounding areas throughout the Southwest. It provides the sustainable grease disposable services that restaurants and commercial kitchens need to be compliant. Next. Finacomposter.com poster.com is a collaboration between BioCycle Magazine and the Biodegradable Products Institute. This website provides information about composting across North America. It gives composters, haulers, and municipal programs the ability to advertise their products and services. Next. Now I'm going to focus more on national resources. The U.S. Food Waste Policy Finder is a tool for researching current food waste policy, best practices, and recommendations for policy improvements. The site also provides ratings for policies, including those in Arizona. Overall, Arizona is rated as moderate policy, with the exception of donation safety and waste ban, for which there are no policies in Arizona. To use this tool, one can identify food waste policies by looking under the rescue policy. This will pull up state statutes and show requirements, exemptions, and the current status of policies. It's a very helpful tool when looking at setting goals. Next. WRAP is a global environmental action non-governmental organization with the purpose to transform food systems into circular living. WRAP creates tools and guidance materials that influence consumers' behaviors to reduce food waste. So the social marketing toolkit I showed earlier was developed in part with WRAP. They have collaborative agreements with organizations in the United States, one based in Pittsburgh, and the United Nations. Next. The Urban Green Lab supports real-world, hands-on action, especially in cities. Examples are professional quality educational videos about sustainable food consumption. These are designed specifically for use in classrooms, households, and workplaces. It also created a series of toolkits in collaboration with the Environmental Law Institute. The toolkits are geared towards educators, professionals, and everyday households. Next. The Environmental Law Institute supports the development of environmental leaders. To this end, they research complex environmental challenges, disseminate best thinking through print and digital media, and they try to build robust debate between people with diverse perspectives. One takeaway I hope viewers will gain from today is where to locate high-quality education materials and resources. There are many. In particular, I'd like to highlight the Environmental Law Institute Food Waste Resource Guide that's on this slide. The link is on this slide. It is a very descriptive and extensive guide that simplifies locating materials. It organizes resources into topics such as date labels, packaging, meal prep, plate size, and storage. The nice thing about this resource is it gives a short description about what it is and who it's geared towards, versus other lists of websites where you look at it and you wonder, who's it for? Are there videos? Are there handouts? What's the target audience? This is a really, really good guide, and I encourage you to make a note of it. Next. For your review, I'm providing 4 slides with the sources I use for this presentation. The publications cited are from the EPA, USDA, FDA, some peer-reviewed journals, popular press sources, infographics, commercial and non-commercial websites. The commercial sites that are published here are currently displayed on the EPA's list of local resources, which I mentioned is published as of July 2024. I have no relationship with any of these sources, and the inclusion in this session should not be interpreted as an endorsement for myself or the conference. Since I put company names on here, I want to acknowledge there's no business relationship. These are communicated by the EPA. If you can click through slowly the next few slides, and I'm happy to make these available. Next. 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 So I'll stop where I started. Everyone can help to prevent food waste, regardless of income, education, gender identity, sex, political views, or so many other variables. To do so, we do need, in my opinion, cultural change with a focus on influencing people's behavior. The focus of behavior change should be to encourage people to be active citizens who care about their food and act and behave accordingly. Optimal strategies are proactive, not reactive. Some examples of proactive strategies are to upcycle food, buy less, plan meals, use shopping lists, use ugly produce, experiment with food scraps, freeze leftovers. We should also advocate for a food culture behavioral change approach so that we acknowledge that food's valuable and we just shouldn't waste it. That's something we just don't do. Reactive actions for food waste are those reflected in the EPA wasted food scale. Recall, some of these actions are to feed its animals, compost, use anaerobic digestion, apply to land, send it down the drain, landfill, or incinerate it. These are not ideal, but they're something. The good news is that we have many tools and resources in Arizona and beyond. And I personally aspire that all individuals and stakeholders, big and small, will voluntarily do their part. Collectively, even small efforts contribute with high impact to improve food security and reduce greenhouse gases. Doing so will support high quality of life, and it will help us experience and enjoy a sustainable world, planet, and a circular economy for today, tomorrow, and many days after. I thank you all for being here, and thanks for all you do.
All right. Thank you
Next
so
slide,
much.
please.
Oh, sorry about that. All right. So thank you so much, Dean, for your very thoughtful presentation. I mean, it was really interesting. And I mean, I could definitely say, at least from my perspective, I definitely think food waste is something that we are all probably guilty of in some way, shape, or form. Even, you know, unintentionally and even in small amounts and all that. But yeah, it's definitely something that it's something that we can all play a part in, because I definitely think that we are all, at least in some way, shape, or form, guilty of wasting food in our day-to-day lives. So, all right. Well, just before we actually get everything wrapped up, we do have a few minutes to go over some questions. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the Slido, and we'll just start going through them. So, what would you say is the best method for community composting?
I'd say best method for community composting is for individuals to follow local regulations and do it in their own homes, if at all possible. If that is not possible, I know some people would like to do so, but they might live in a apartment building or condominium that has a homeowners association where that is not possible. I would say compost in your own home if possible, rather than putting it outside, and then use the tools that I described to find out where you can transport it on your own and dispose of it legally and in a way that's socially desirable. But it's challenging. I know in some parts of Phoenix, I live in north central Phoenix, there are certain bins that we can request from the city that allow us to do composting. Some communities have them available, some do not. It does change frequently. So 1 month, if a person looks and sees, well, it's not available in my area, I'd like to do it, it may be available in another month. So staying informed, I think, is a good way to um, be as proactive as possible.
Yeah, good point. And I am glad that you brought up the whole legality of it as well, because even though there are some good intentions, if done incorrectly, you could definitely have some kind of regulatory agency, knocking at your door if you are breeding flies or something like that. So it's just one of those things that, doing it safely, doing it responsibly is definitely the best method. So yeah, no, thank you for that. All right. So the next question that we do have is how is the oh, um, okay. How is the incentivized food donation program being communicated slash shared? Oh, incentivized. Sorry about that.
The incentivization comes down partly to tax write-offs, social desirability, the feeling of doing something good, having a plan within a food service where you know you have a certain amount of food that is not going to go to waste. In Arizona, as I mentioned, there are many different organizations that will support donations. I think one incentive is to be educated and understand that there's not as much liability as one might think. I described in depth the Emerson Act. This is a very extensive act that does protect donors from that decisional balance of, well, we have this left over. Should we call someone to pick it up or should we not? When I did research for this presentation, I found there are very few actual lawsuits that have been submitted when people who donate, when I say people, individuals, restaurants donate according to those provisions, when they follow those provisions, there are actually very few lawsuits that happen. So I think education is an incentive. And as far as more tangible incentives, I think we have a lot of work to do with that. And the national strategy that I identified, I think it was published in 2024, is going to really try to find tangible ways to educate people on incentives. I mean, the bottom line is money for most people. For consumers, groceries are expensive. For restaurants, food is expensive. When it's financially linked, I think it's much more powerful. And we need to do a better job of financially selling the idea of doing it and minimizing risk. So honestly, I don't know the best ways. It's complicated. You saw the supply chain, all the different places where food comes from. Some are more wasteful than others. I think in every one of those we can incentivize, and money is one of the greatest motivators.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, there is a part two to that. And then someone did actually put in the Slido that there are federal Good Samaritan laws that do protect donors. And then I do believe that there are some state laws as well to protect the do donate in good faith. But the part two is retailers and operators, they often claim that they would be held civilly liable if someone were to contract a foodborne illness from donated food.
So thanks for the comments about retailers' hesitation and their willingness to communicate that. I think as environmental professionals, we can function as a subject matter expert or as a good faith advocate to encourage retailers to really look at what is the real liability. It's a common thought. Many retailers have that thought. We live in a very litigious society. If you look recently at McDonald's, their E. coli outbreak many years ago, Chipotle, I mean, there are serious financial stakes when something goes wrong. But I think as environmental specialists and people who work in this field, if we can help organizations understand the liability to address some of their concerns realistically and point out the benefits, not only financial, but social desirability, goodwill, patting on the back, that will go a long way. But we have a long way to go with that.
Oh no, absolutely. So, and then someone does just have like a small question for you. So, what are some of your favorite ways to use leftovers when you have small amounts of different dishes sitting in the fridge at the end of the week?
Thank you. So I'm going to answer that question by telling you about the Vitamix lifestyle. And I'm not selling anything here. I personally have a Vitamix, and I use it for so much. If I have savory food items left over and they're fine, I'll make soup from them. If I have fruits and vegetables, I will make a smoothie. And I think using the tools like storage calculators, you can figure out, well, how long can I keep something? At what temperature do I need to reheat something? What if I'm reheating it for the second time? How long will things last? Does the smell test work, which I think it works really, really well? I try to not waste anything at all. I acknowledge it, but I think using some of the tools for consumers at the EPA website gives real practical strategies on how to handle foods. And then one thing is buy less and try to use things faster and plan meals so that everyone will eat it so there's not that food wasted at the end.
All right, cool. And then last one, that it's just a comment that someone wants to say thank you very much. I mean, you do very important work. It's very important in Eastern Arizona. There's food banks that do receive truckloads of food on very short notice. So definitely thank you for your presentation, all the work that you do. I mean, this is definitely a very important subject. I mean, because even just in the US or even Arizona, it definitely seems like as a society, it's pretty, unfortunate and honestly unacceptable the fact that we have an overabundance of food that really is just a matter of waste that, that could be going to other people, right? So no, thank you again for everything.
Thank you. We can connect the dots and do this and succeed. I'm very confident.